Today we are here with the one and only Miss Coffee Black Whiskey Neat, Danielle. Welcome to Bourbon Lore.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for making the trip. Where are we today?
We're in Arizona, which is awesome, and we are at this really swanky house right now, and I'm just in awe of it all at the moment.
How many times have you been to Scottsdale?
Once.
Before this?
No, now.
Well, cheers to that.
Yes.
That's just that. All right, welcome to your first time to Scottsdale Bourbon Lore.
Yes.
So the old granddad.
Ooh, that's good.
Jason was here earlier. He was loving it. Don't let him take that bottle. So one of the things that we have been doing as Bourbon Lore is having some conversations with some other individuals out there that are pushing the envelope and doing some great things with, content and community and creating, I'd say, this more experiential element on, different sites as far as, different mediums with Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. And I came across yours quite a while ago and loved watching it. And I'm curious, for a lot of us that are out there, what is your origin story with how did you connect with whiskey? Why bourbon? And then I'd love to kind of hear, how did the channel come about?
Okay, there's a couple parts to that, so if I get off track, just tell me.
I'll bring it back.
But in terms of whiskey, my husband loved Scotch originally, and he would come home with a bottle of Scotch, and I said, you got to stop spending money on Scotch. What are we doing here, right? Yeah. And eventually I learned if you can't beat them, you join them. And that's where we went with it. So he originally poured a super peated Scotch. Oh. My very first introduction to whiskey was super peated Scotch, and I hated it. I spit it out and was like, this is disgusting. I now have a love for highly peated Scotch, but at the time, it is not an intro to whiskey.
Yeah, right.
So he said, okay, let's back up. Let's try bourbon, and let's see if you like bourbon instead. So we started with Maker's Mark. Beautiful. And to me, Maker's Mark will always have such a special part because it was my very first pour, and I fell in love with whiskey through that. It wasn't like some unicorn bottle or something. It was just standard Maker's Mark, and that became my love of whiskey. And from there, it kind of just expanded, and we were a 5-bottle family at the time, right? You never had more than 5 bottles at a time. And we did the full Bourbon Trail trip, and we did all of that all before Instagram and everything, and just really fell in love with what whiskey was and how they were going about making it. And I was a math and science teacher before I had kids.
Okay.
So I've always had the nerdy side of me that really likes to know, how are you doing this, especially from a scientific side. And so I wanted to deep dive into it that way. And I am not a history expert by any means like you are. I am on the science side of it all in my mind. But so I fell in love with bourbon that way. And I went to a bar one night, and I think probably every woman can relate to the whole mansplaining. And that was the thing, as I had a bartender I tried to order a glass of Booker's Neat, and he said, is this for your husband? And we went back and forth probably for 5 minutes, and I was finally like, just give me the pour and I'm done here, And so that night I said, I have to find other people that like whiskey. I am not the only person that has had this happen. And I know that, as a 23-year-old woman, you don't look the part of your grandpa's whiskey, right?
Yeah,
so I said, okay, let me get on Instagram and just see. And that was really all it was. And to me, it was like I stuck it to the bartender moment, who, God knows that guy has no idea.
Have you been back? I'm just curious, have we checked up on this guy?
I have not checked up on him, but I started my page with a bottle of Booker's. That was my very first post because I was like, this is what started it all. And yeah, he would never know that, and that's okay. But to me, it was like, I got him moment.
I love that.
But no, there was no expectations for this channel. There was no game plan at all. This was just, I just want to find other people that like whiskey, and I want to talk about it. And from there, it kind of exploded. It was pre-COVID, so I think I got lucky in terms of timing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everybody was on social networks, and I said, well, let me share what I know. I don't know history. I don't know family origin stories. I can't memorize prices of bottles and all of that. I don't have that mindset. But what I can do is say, here's what I taste, and here's why I like something. And I've really kind of grown my palate from there, but I didn't have a background in any of that. It was just all, you know, I love desserts. Clearly, I love candy. I love desserts. Everything relates to that for me. And I think it's relatable, right?
Exactly.
Like if you relate things to Jolly Ranchers, people know what Jolly Ranchers taste like, you know? So that's kind of why I went that way with it. And I shared all my tasting notes and stuff. But I think at the end of the day, all I really wanted to do was say, there's no right or wrong thing that you taste in whiskey, and I want people to walk away feeling confident saying, I taste cotton candy and this is why I taste that. And don't be ashamed of the fact that other people are like, no, it's not cotton candy at all. That's okay. Like I want people to feel confident in what they're saying, and that's my whole end goal with it.
Yes. No, I love that. I'm curious, do you have like a go-to tasting notes as far as candy that, you know, like, it's really like, I'm just like, is there like a core, like when you think, all right, I have this flavor, this is always Jolly Rancher, or this is always cotton candy, or?
No, there's not a go-to, honestly. I think I just ate a lot of candy as a kid. Like, don't tell my mom, but, you know. But yeah, I mean, I was a gymnast, a competitive gymnast growing up, and so I could always eat as many sweets as I wanted, and it was okay. And so those things stick with me. That's what I like.
The math and science side, I mean, you mentioned that. I'm just curious, like, how do you use that kind of math and science background today with what you're doing with whiskey?
I think it's just an interest, you know. I think really just appreciating all that goes into how complex it is to distill and to create these flavors. And, you know, it is a science. It's an art of blending, but it's a science of distilling. And I just really like to see that aspect of it all.
Yeah. I think, you know, there's a piece of, when we look at American whiskey and you think about bourbon and kind of where it's at today, there's obviously a lot of content that's getting created that's out there. And I'm just curious, like, how do you describe your channel and what is like your goal with the content that you're sharing for your fans that are not only watching today, but maybe somebody hasn't seen your channel yet?
For me, it's all about tasting, and it's all about flavor profiles and finding what you like. You know, if you like a sweeter pour, then you would like maybe some of the double oaked. If you like a spicier pour, then you should try some of these ryes. You know, that's what I want to do. And I'm not here to say, hey, this is a good one or this is a bad one, because there is something for everyone. You know, I'm not a drain pour person. I'm not going to bash on a brand. Somebody likes it, and that's not a bad thing. Right. You know, everybody should like something. So all I want to express is, here's different ones that you might like if you like this flavor profile. And that's my goal with it.
Beautiful. So how many years now?
I want to say
4,
it's 5.
5? Okay.
I'm honestly not sure, so don't fact check me.
Well, let's go back and check the date she started that Instagram account.
Exactly.
When you think about those 5 years and you think about where did you go to learn about whiskey or find information, I'm just curious whether from, you know, other content creators or sites.
You know, everybody starts out watching what everybody else is doing. As a content creator wise, I think, you know, you shouldn't be naive to what other people are creating and what they're sharing. We're all here. We're all a community. There's no, like, they're better and they're worse or whatever. You know, I think the whole industry on itself is all about the community and all about sharing knowledge. And so, yeah, I mean, I watch other people's, I'm like, oh, I had no idea. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, you know? But it's, yeah, for me, that's kind of where I started with it. And then obviously, you know, the more distilleries you go to, the more exciting it becomes, and the more information you learn. And I just sit there in awe listening to people talk about what it is that they're doing with it all, and how is their brand different than another brand, and how are they pushing the envelope. And it's really just a fun time right now. Like, whiskey has really blown up, and there's so much creativity in it all. So I just enjoy that aspect of it.
The energy and the growth has been exceptional to see. And when you think about your last 5 years, like, obviously Bourbon Lore is very interested in the experiential, the moments, the memories. I'm curious, do you have like a couple lore moments when you think back, if you were to pause and go, over the last 5 years, something that really stands out to you where you're like, wow, I can't believe I just had this pour or this experience or this, you know, meet and greet? I'm just curious.
I think there's a lot of that. You know, I think like this moment, for example, last night, we went to your party last night, and it was really just like family and friends, and it was just, let's hang out and let's drink good bourbon. And I mean, you're pouring stuff from the early 90s, and it's just like, hey, have fun, enjoy it. You know, like moments like that, you sit back and you're like, where am I and how did I get to this point? You know? But I think they're all special moments. They're all special for one reason or another, and they're all going to stick in your memory.
Yeah, no, last night was even a lore moment for me. We're sitting here at this table, and I'm like, it's an honor, and it's humbling to see, whether it was Connor O'Driscoll or Dan Calloway or Mark Irwin, just hanging out and sharing their love of America's spirit. So, it was a beautiful night. I'm curious for some of us that, think about maybe approaching American whiskey, for the first time, any advice, thoughts, comments, or recommendations as somebody coming into the space as a beginner?
Don't be intimidated. I think, with there being so much out there right now, it is intimidating. It's intimidating to walk into a liquor store. So I do think that, that's where content creation should help you. I think that that's such a benefit of it, is to find somebody that you like, that you can say, hey, let's recommend a $30 bottle, because why do you need to start at a $300 bottle? You don't. I mean, you should find your love of it and grow from there, but don't chase unicorns. You know? Not that some of these unicorns in the book are bad. Oh, no, I'm sure. They're amazing.
I mean, this, we all start the journey, I think, at the same place, and it's at this foundational level where we're there to just try, right? Yes. Try, learn, have conversations, meet people that have, maybe sipped on different things that I haven't had an opportunity to sip on, and it's a beautiful thing about it. And obviously the whiskey rabbit hole continues to grow, and
you can get sucked into it all. Yes.
I know. Distillery wise, like, is there a particular distillery that kind of stands out to you right now that you really appreciate, respect, kind of what they're doing in the market, that somebody's been around for 5 years and seen some of these brands? Somebody standing out to you right now that you're like, there's somebody to watch?
There's a lot of those, and that's a really hard question to answer. Because I do think there's so many new brands that are really coming into their own at this point, that maybe started 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you're now seeing that labor of love. So for example, like Hard Truth Spirits, to me, I have loved to see their rye grow to what it is, and the fact that they're doing it on their own and they're not, just sourcing from everyone else. Sagamore, who now switched from sourcing with MGP to their own distillate. I think that's the fun in it, right? Like really seeing a brand come to life, because it does take time. And you want to see that 5 to 10 year range. And when they're starting to get to that point now, it's just exciting. Yeah, no,
it's unbelievable to think about how many brands are in the market and the investment, the capital that's been put into American whiskey. So, that's why I truly feel like it's just getting started. And to think about, the beautiful blessings we've had of some of these, distilleries over the last 100 years, where it goes in this next 10 is going to be a wild adventure. From your standpoint with the channel and kind of what you're bringing to fans like myself, what can we expect to see from, Coffee Black Whiskey Neat in 2025?
Oh gosh, I said I don't have a game plan, right? Yeah. I don't have an end goal here. Hopefully sharing more good whiskey, hopefully sharing more experiences like this one, featuring what it is that we're doing out here and all the different things that you are creating, because when we talk about being an artist, you are fully there with these experiences. So, I just want to share more of that.
Yeah, and I appreciate and respect the fact that you consistently show up every week and serve your fans, with some of the the amazing content and your perspective. So thank you for doing what you're doing. Now, I'm kind of curious, what are your thoughts when you first saw Bourbon Lore, when you first kind of started to see what we were doing? What were your thoughts, and maybe some insights for anybody that hasn't had a chance to get to know us yet?
I think just what you're trying to share is what inspired me about the brand. The fact that there are so many unicorn bottles in this book, right? But you're not sitting there going, hey, these are all on display, and everybody just looks at them and no one touches them. Whiskey is meant to be enjoyed. And I think that people that are starting collections are questioning, should I open this? I mean, I had somebody reach out to me last night and say, hey, I was gifted a bottle of wild turkey from the 80s. Should I open it or should I save it? I was like, 100% open it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and yeah, there's, you know, it's easy to say as the person not with the bottle. I get
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But at the same time, I just think, you know, whiskey is there for you to enjoy. It's not there to look at. It's not there to collect dust. And I think that's what drew me to what you were doing.
Yeah.
Is it was, hey, not only let's share this love and this passion behind these brands and the story that they've told with their whiskey, but let's also enjoy it and let's talk about all of that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, for me, that was the most inspiring piece and what drew me to Bourbon Lore.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's I agree 100%. I mean, the aspect of like, I love the adventure and the journey of finding certain bottles and meeting certain people and hearing the story and finding out the folklore of that bottle. But then I also now want to create a new chapter of lore in my own journey and share that and open that bottle in some special destinations or with some great people. And that's really, I'd say, you know, a big part of what Bourbon Lore is about, is creating a new chapter of lore in your life with being able to bring some of these, you know, distilleries, some of these, you know, unique expressions and some of these awesome adventures into a full package, right? So today we are here in Scottsdale to celebrate this passion project of mine that I talked about with Ashley, my wife, you know, several years ago, and she was like, you know, I don't know, you know, like, what do you mean you want to do a book? And I think the hard part was a lot of these bottles, you know, 10, 15 years ago, I'd hear about. And, you know, it was truly lore, right? You wouldn't necessarily be able to find the information, you know, even finding like photos, the distilleries didn't have much information on them. And so I wanted to be able to share the story of me as a fan and, you know, with Clay and talking about not only the, you know, the story of me as a fan, but really the story of American whiskey from the last 100 years. So it's 100 bottles that literally take you back until like literally over the last 100 plus years. So we start off in the late 1800s and kind of bring you up into, you know, the late 1990s, early 2000s. And I'm just curious, do you have, you know, is there a fan kind of, you know, excitement around a certain era of American whiskey that you find really intriguing?
Honestly, you know, when you talk about some of the bottles from the 30s and the 40s and things like that, it's like, it's such a different world. And I just, you know, I have such an appreciation for the fact that you're able to share that history. Because like I said, I don't have that ability to do that, right? But, you know, I think about my father-in-law and, you know, he's 77 now. And so what was whiskey like back when he was drinking and in his prime and things like that. And so I think just those moments are really cool to kind of give you a piece of history that you couldn't taste in anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Wine doesn't save, but whiskey does, you know?
Right.
So I just think those moments are cool.
No, I love that. And, you know, it's fascinating to think, to your point, like, it's almost like this transformation. You open up a bottle from the 30s and you're thinking to yourself, I can't believe I'm sipping on something right after, you know, Prohibition, and that maybe was asleep in the wood during Pro.
Right.
And, you know, what was happening in the world, what was happening in Arizona. And we opened up a bottle from, you know, Old Overholt from 1908. And, you know, you think about like Arizona wasn't even a state,
Yes.
you know, at that period of time. It was still a territory, and you're sipping on something that, you know, takes you into a whole, you know, I don't know, another layer of what American whiskey represents to me in the historical, but the experiential. So this weekend, we have a pretty exciting lineup.
Yes.
You know, we're going to be going to the museum, you know, the Western Spirit Museum here in Old Town Scottsdale, one of the top Western Americana museums in the United States. And, you know, when you think about a book launch, you know, we didn't want to just simply go to a bookstore and do a signing,
there you go.
right?
Yeah.
We wanted to be able to, you know, to create something here in the way of a moment and an experience that will hopefully, you know, create a defining memory that lasts weeks or months or hopefully even a lifetime. What are you most excited about for the book launch here in Scottsdale tonight?
I'm just excited to see you have your moment of passion for it all. I mean, like, you know, from somebody that is a fan side of it, and, you know, months ago when we first connected, I really didn't know much about Bourbon Lore. And to just kind of get to know you on a personal level and get to see how much excitement you have within this that you're sharing with people is just really cool. I mean, it's one of those moments where you're like, hey, guys, don't be afraid to to follow your passion, right? And you get to share that. So I'm most excited for that.
Oh, thank you. Cheers to that. Something else that I think is beautiful about what you're doing is you get to share it, with your significant other, with your husband, and bourbon for me has been something that Ashley and I have been able to share pretty much since the beginning. I didn't throw a big peaty scotch at her right out of the gate.
You eased her in a little bit better. Yeah, I'm still trying to teach my husband that.
Let's start with the little bakers. I like that. Shout out to the Samuels family. But it's a beautiful thing, I think, being able to share that and have that, kind of opportunity to where, like we'll do Manhattan nights, or we'll do an old-fashioned night, or if we get something, if I'm excited and I have a new bottle that comes in, and I think it's a unique opportunity for us that American whiskey, to your point, is not just something for the gentleman or for your grandfather. Like, it is a spirit that continues to push the envelope, not only in its craft, but in the people that appreciate it and enjoy it. So I think it's great with what you're doing. I am a huge fan, and thank you for being a part of what we're doing here with Bourbon Lore. So
I appreciate it, sincerely.
I look forward to you having your first signed, autographed copy of this. Everything about the book for me is, with purpose and intent, right? And so, when you see, the brand design on the cover, a lot of these elements come from, my childhood and growing up here in the American West, to, the bottles that we selected. You can imagine, we essentially selected or picked 300 bottles out of the collection that we want to photograph, and we figured we'll go through this 300 and kind of figure out what are the 100, because this already is 303 pages, weighs almost 5 pounds.
And how do you narrow it down?
Yeah,
right? That's always the question. How do you pick your favorites?
And it was not like it was not easy, right? I mean, obviously we have 4 beautiful love bugs, and it's like, which is your favorite child? Well, it could be depend on the day.
You never answer it, right? You have it in your mind every time, but you never answer that question.
Well, today their room is perfect. They've been really great. They haven't given their mom any grief. No, but it's, it was this element of, not necessarily the value, but are there certain bottles that I think represent certain chapters in American whiskey that really, stood for something, right? Are there certain bottles that meant something to me as a fan? And, did I have that bottle or, at a certain, celebratory occasion or a certain moment in my life? And so there was a lot of that piece that kind of went into it. And so, when you get into the, to the book, you'll see, like, here's an example of, one of my first early Eagle Rares,
Right.
So when you get into the late 80s and have, some of these, wooden box Eagle Rares, to, my first Bookers from 1979. And I think there's these exciting kind of, pieces of the book that I hope are both experiential in the photography, as well as in getting into, some of the lore associated with that respective bottling and how it kind of came to life. But we really hope that this is something that gets shared across not just whiskey fans, but across the U.S. and into families and homes where somebody's like, I really want to get that for my loved one, or I want to get that for my brother, or I want to get this for my sister, or I want to get this for my mom and dad, to where it's also a talking piece. And I think that's the other beautiful thing about whiskeys. For me, it is about community, right?
That's what all of this has been, and I think all of these experiences really show. Everybody is here because they love whiskey, and you can talk to anybody. I mean, we opened a bottle with Connor last night, and he's just talking about stories of his childhood and things like that, and those are the moments where you're like, we are here because of the love.
Yes, well said. Well, from the love of American whiskey to the love of Bourbon Lore and to Coffee Black and Whiskey Neat, thank you for being a part of this moment with us. And thank you for continuing to spread the word of American whiskey in such a beautiful way. So,
thank you for having me.
Cheers, Danielle. Thank you, my dear.